Yeah. Excellent. Well, welcome. It's slightly after 6, so we're going to get started. This stuff is all very close. I don't have as much walking room as normal. It's not your fault.
Do you want us?
No, it's good. Yeah. I'm just going to knock it off at some point. Tonight is Brian's Insider Secrets for Managing Your Property Manager. This is the class that we were going to teach last week, but last week we were having a bomb cyclone here in Fort Collins, so I don't know if you were scared for your life or if you were just like, by Friday it'll be sunny, because that's kind of how I thought about it. There was somebody, how many of you are familiar with Nextdoor, the application online? Tammy's gonna pull the microphone out here any second.
Sorry.
It's all good. Just leave it.
We're
We're all good. No, we're good.
And then are you sure?
We're good. Thank you. So somebody on Nextdoor was like, "Oh, we're from Texas. What do we need to know to survive the blizzard?" And I was like, "Wait till Friday. It'll be gone." So hopefully you all survived. So next week, James is not here tonight because he went to LA and contracted some horrible disease. He thinks he's dying, but he probably just has a cough.
Yeah, it's the flu.
It's the flu.
If you talk to him, he sounds really bad.
Well, he doesn't call me back.
Well, it's 'cause he can't really talk right now.
Okay, fair enough. So next week's, assuming James is alive and well, we will be teaching arguably the best class, part 4, which is essentially, if you've been to any of the first 3, it's where James and I teach many topics that we can't really spend a 2-hour class segment on, but they are 15 to 30 minutes long each, so you'll get 3 to 4, maybe 5 topics in that. I don't know what James is teaching yet, so for his couple. The week after that is solving challenges with your tenants. Royce is actually going to teach that, I think, instead of me. So every time he talks tonight during class without raising his hand, he's teaching the next week's class. That's how this is going to work. So solving challenges with your tenants. We will go through a bunch of common things that happen with tenants, and we will tell you how to resolve those issues with your tenants, and then we will cover any tenant challenges that you personally have as well. So if you have hey, I have this horror story with the tenant, how do I deal with it? Feel free to bring that, and we will solve it live in class. The week after that is April 10th. James would tell you 2 weeks ago that I was turning 50, but I'm not. Turning 32. What a jerk. So it's not a class here. This class will be somewhere else. Do you know where it's at, Tammy? Is it at Bad Daddy's?
Is it Bad Daddy's or
It'll probably be at Bad Daddy's or Ryan's, one of the 2 places that we frequent. So that's what's going on April 10th. There's no need to bring birthday presents. It's not that kind of birthday. I'm too old for that. And then the following week, James definitely will be better. So he will be teaching how to acquire a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio with just $3,000. And that, if you've not seen that class, it's a really good class. So he would tell you it's amazing, but I will not tell you that. I'll just tell you it's really good. So introductions. Tammy has the mic, so she can hand it to Royce, and Royce can start since he's the only front row person tonight. Introduce yourself, and then question of the night for tonight is, if you have a property manager, what's your biggest frustration? I'll see if I can help you with that tonight. And if you don't have a property manager, what keeps you from hiring one?
you have to really.
You got to get into that mic.
The microphone's not that.
Yep, it's not that responsive.
So do you want me to just smack a few times?
Whatever you need to do.
Hit them a lot, right? Okay. Yeah, Brian must smell or something. I don't know why I'm staying as far away from him as possible. But I'm Royce. I do have a property manager. I think the biggest frustration I have is just it comes down to communication ultimately. I would prefer that they were much more forward with me versus me having to check in with them. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that bothers me for sure. But yeah, I think they're great overall. But you definitely have to manage your manager according to this class.
And if you're here, the audio may or may not. Oh, there, the audio is working again. We're good. I was going to say.
Are you seeing the microphone register? Do you have that thing up?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was registering, but it is no longer registering. So talk loud.
Okay, I'm Tammy Orr, and I would go with Royce. I guess communication. So, yeah, good answer, Royce.
Now everyone will say that, they'll be like, good answer, Royce.
I mean, I taught the class.
I'm Al. I do have a property manager. I'm married to her. But, and there's no frustration at all.
Safe answer.
One marriage saved already tonight. It's amazing.
But had I not had one, I probably wouldn't hire one yet because I don't have that many properties. And yeah.
Sure.
I'm Julie Peters, and I now have a property manager for a place in Arizona.
Awesome.
I never used a property manager before, but I agree with you, it's communication, having to call them to get things going.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mitchell. I don't have any property management, not yet, at least. And what's keeping me from one? Probably getting more properties.
Perfect.
Hi, I'm Selena, and this is my first time attending the class.
Welcome.
So, no, I do not have a property manager. I'm just listening to everything that you guys have to say so I can take it all in, because someday I do want to get my license.
Cool.
I'm James. I do maintenance in, for rental properties, and so my goal of my business is to try and help people self-manage, and so I kind of feel it's weird for me to hire a property manager, but I also don't have enough properties to warrant that yet.
Hire a property manager so you can help more people. Makes total sense to me.
I'm Brandon. I do have a property manager for all of a month and a half now.
Nice.
Hasn't been a great start.
Excellent. Thanks for coming to class. Now we can have a good story. Yeah.
Quick version of the story is I got my first round of financial documents explaining the breakdown of everything, the maintenance, all that stuff. And there was a lot of big negative numbers that I didn't understand how that happened. So I had a meeting with them, asked them to explain it, and they forgot to collect rent. So, yeah. And then, so they have now used the security deposit to cover me, to pay me, and have set up a payment plan with the tenant. So, it's been a little bit of a rough start. That's my frustration.
Who did you hire? You're off mic.
Yeah, I won't say out loud.
I'll ask you in the middle. You can whisper it into my ear.
Hello, my name is Grayson. First time tonight. I don't have a property manager because I don't have any properties to manage. However, I'm kind of on the maintenance end as well, so I have a unique frustration that getting these houses to be safe and livable, I have a hard time getting approval through the property manager, back to the owner, back to the property manager, back to me about whether or not I can, stop that pipe or whatever's leaking or causing damage. That's a frustration, but I don't have a property manager. I do work for one.
Do you work for multiple ones?
Not right now. Right now I work for myself and I do property management maintenance kind of as a filler for nights and weekends.
Okay. Like, do you work for another, like, one source property manager that, like, filters work to you?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
We have like 300 some property management. They're very close by. I'm sure you know who they are.
I mean, I know all of them, so but with 300 properties, I'd have to stop and think, because, yeah, that's smaller. But so, is it the owners or is it the property manager?
I don't know. I imagine since communication seems to be the issue, it goes back and forth. A recent one, a door was kicked in at a rental unit, and they're like, "Can you just patch it up?" And I'm like, "No, they kicked in the door. The door is bent, and I can put my hand against it in a stiff push, and I can open it." And
Sure.
We'll tell you what, patch it up, and we'll get back to that later. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So it's a frustration because obviously it's a real safety issue, not being able to keep people out or in.
Yeah, that's crazy. All right, we're gonna have to turn off the mics here in a second to have an actual discussion. Yeah.
As a property manager, I think communication is my biggest issue. They're usually pretty good, but you're always wondering what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
Or at least I do.
Hopefully we can solve some of that tonight.
Don Pope, Investors Choice Funding. We do hard money loans. We also do bridge loans for rental properties, and we've got a 5-year balloon for investors who are renting properties. So it's more of a cap rate type of qualification. Yes, I've had property managers in the past. Qualifying their tenants is probably the biggest and the most frustrating of them all.
Hello, I'm Michelle. We don't currently have a property manager. My husband Austin is our property manager.
And
So,
he does everything
yeah,
perfectly.
I love it. It's free. No. I think what keeps us from hiring one is just the amount of properties we have is currently manageable for us, and probably what would incentivize me more to get one is finding a side hustle that would make a better return on investment than doing that. Basically, is kind of how we look at it.
Yeah. Or just buy enough properties to where you can't manage. Yeah. Either way. See? Everything's going to work out just fine.
Yeah, I'm kind of where you were saying of
that everything was perfect the way you were managing it?
Yes. I actually rather enjoy it for the most part. It's not too different than my current management job.
The look on Royce's face and the statement, that will change, they go hand in hand.
So far, but like Michelle was saying, as we get too many, I'll want to pass the buck, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm Caleb. Main reason why I don't have a property manager is I don't have enough properties.
Perfect. Your first time here too?
Yeah.
Awesome. Welcome.
I'm Kevin, and I don't have a property manager because I don't have a rental property yet.
All the way over here. And then we'll give it back to Tammy. Oh, yes. Sneaky.
Hi, I'm Allison, and I do not have a property manager because I don't have any properties to manage.
Aren't you effectively like a property manager, though?
Pretty much.
I'm Denise, and I was hoping to miss the introductions.
All right. So Denise is, I would have made her go.
I'm sure whatever the answer is time.
James isn't even here, and he's messing with me. Oh, how much did he pay you for that? Yeah.
I don't have a property manager, and I should.
Yes.
But
Agreed.
Giving up control is hard.
Yeah, you don't have control anyway. It's just all random. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Brian Williams. I'm a long-term investor in northern Colorado. So Fort Collins, Loveland, Greeley, Windsor, Severance, Evans, not Longmont anymore because I only had one there and I sold it. So I've taught this class before. I think one other time, James and I taught the class that he taught 2 weeks ago now, which was how to select a property manager. And he taught that for like an hour and a half. And then he left me like 30 minutes to teach my portion of the class, which was how to manage your property manager. So we decided that was just too long because he didn't finish his slides and I had to rush through mine. So we broke it into 2 classes. And so we've updated it, and as silly as it might be, when you see yellow text tonight, we're going to call that an insider secret because no, just don't go fire and I'll be okay. So it's good that James isn't here because he can't harass me for that. So if you guys have questions, feel free to ask. For those of you that are new, please do fill out your form, turn it into Allison, and I believe she has a book for you. It looks like we have plenty of books for tonight. So starting kind of where James left off 2 weeks ago, which was, hey, you've interviewed your property managers and you've decided this is the one I think is for me, which is hopefully something that you've done. So what do you do now? Well, the first thing you need to do is go ask for a copy of all the documents they're going to ask you to sign when you agree to have them as your property manager. What does that consist of? Lead paste paint disclosure for the rentals, right? This is pretty key. There's a lot of legal stuff behind having a lead-based paint disclosure. If your house was built before 1978, you could have lead-based paint. Some would say even later. I sign them for all of my rentals unless they were built in like 2015. So it's just a safety precaution. Lead-based paint obligations of the landlord. So this basically is something that the landlord's going to sign, and it basically says, hey, you're going to provide the above disclosure, you're going to provide the information pamphlet that says what lead-based paint is, how to avoid it, how to not get sick from it, but they should also have you sign that. Pretty standard forms if you're renting in Fort Collins or any other city with an occupancy limits disclosure. So Fort Collins has U+2. If you're not familiar with it and you're renting, or your property manager is renting in Fort Collins, and if they're not familiar with it, you better call them and get them very familiar with it. There are actually 2 people whose job it is for Fort Collins to drive around and look for violations of this. And the violation is $1,000 a day fine. So it is no joke. Basically, you cannot have a building over-occupied for what it was intended for. Definitions of working relationships. So that is, hey, you are actually going to be renting my property. It's the same, very similar to what you would sign if you were hiring a broker to sell or a broker to buy your house. It defines what relationship you guys have. Brokerage duties addendum to property management agreement. So this is essentially landlord agency, right? The broker, which is essentially you have to be a licensed agent to be a property manager, or at least there has to be one on that is, I don't know if they have to be the owner, but they doesn't have to be a licensed agent to be a property manager. But this basically shows that the broker is representing you as the landlord as your agent. You're giving them that permission. The tenant is what's known as a customer. So they are not really involved, they're just the customer of the work between the property manager and you. It's yellow, perfect. So you should read their lease. This seems really obvious, but you should read their lease and you should ask for updates that you think are necessary. And you're like, Brian, why am I ever going to ask a property manager for an update to a lease? Because you may already have a lease that you really like, and you may decide your lease, Mr. Property Manager or Mrs. Property Manager, doesn't have this in it. And this is a good time for you to say, hey, I'd actually like you to update this. So I've asked my property manager for updates to leases, and they've gone to their attorney, and they've come back, and they've actually added it. It took me about 2 years to get a few things in, but now they're in there. And they're really important things, and there's stuff that we teach in class, like only collect a full month's rent, even if it's a partial month of rent, and charge the prorated amount in the second month, right? That's a super important one to me. Tammy.
Did it take you a lot of badgering of your property manager to get them to make those changes, or were they pretty receptive the first go around?
So we'll talk about where I did this. I mean, I did this, we kind of have an annual meeting where I bring up like 20 topics of like, hey, what about this? Could you do this differently? Could you do it better? Based essentially on all the stuff we teach here in class. And so 2 years ago, I was like, hey, I noticed that in this particular rental, like you rented a property on the 25th of the month and you let them move in for essentially paying 5 days of rent and a security deposit. And I'm like, I'm not okay with that. So you need to fix that. And so a year went by. There wasn't much discussion on it. There's a lot of other stuff getting fixed. And then in the last year, they're like, yep, we now have that. It's integrated and it's in. So don't give up if you don't get it right away. But these are things that you might hear in class that are best practices that we teach. So just because your property manager doesn't have it doesn't mean you can't actually have them add it. In conjunction with this, ask them, do you have an attorney on retainer? If the answer to that question is no, I would be concerned. If your property manager doesn't have an attorney they can call who knows their business very well and say, hey, we have this issue and this is what it is, what should we do? And they don't have that attorney, that's a problem. So it's yellow. It's an insider secret. Tammy's going to go, ooh. That was more like I did like an ollie on a skateboard, ooh, kind of thing. So having an attorney who actually knows their business, who knows their lease, who hopefully helped them write their lease and do modifications to it is super important. And then property management agreement. Obviously, we're going to want to see what their agreement looks like. There's such a glare on that screen, I'm going to have to stand over here. So when you get this agreement, this is a list of some things you want to verify. And I'm going to show you one or two different agreements tonight from different property managers just so you can have a sample of what you're going to be seeing. So make sure that you have your entity, your ownership entity of the property listed correctly, right? If it's not listed correctly, it's not doing you any good. Make sure that your signature for your entity is correct. If it's just, hey, Brian Williams, but really my LLC owns the property, that's me signing personally. That's a huge violation of all of our asset protection stuff. So Start date, length of the initial term. How long are you agreeing to have them as your manager? Verify that's there. Initial setup fee. Is this per property, per unit? How much does it cost? Right? Is it $200 for you to go out and take pictures of one unit in my 8-plex, or is it $200 per unit, so I'm paying $1,600 for you to set this up? Figure that out. Talk to them about it. What is their management fee? Did you negotiate something with them? Did they actually correctly put it in the agreement? I have negotiated something and it has not been correctly put in the agreement. You want to check these things. You're signing a contract, right? Minimum fee. I should have highlighted this in yellow, because this is one most people won't think about. A lot of managers have a minimum fee that is a set dollar amount. So if your unit is vacant, they're going to charge you $100 a month. Well, let's say they're charging you 10%. And normally rent is $800. If it's fully rented, how much are they getting a month? $80. So when it's vacant, they get $100. Well, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it's their job to put a tenant in there, and they're going to make more money when it's vacant. I'm not going to incentivize that. So I'm going to go and I'm going to negotiate, hey, when it's rented, you're making $80. So at most here, you're making $75. Right? And this is, if you're renting single-family homes, it's most likely not going to affect you, at least not in the northern Colorado area. But if you have multifamily where you're renting for $700, $800, $900, and even $1,000, depending on what your management fee is, this can be an issue. Hopefully your unit's never vacant for a month, but it happens. So definitely watch out for that. Leasing fee. A leasing fee is what they charge when they say, hey, you want to rent this property? Here, I'm going to have you sign this lease. No, you don't. You want to rent this property? I'm going to have you sign this lease. I'm going to charge you, as the owner, anywhere from a set dollar amount to a full month of rent. So this leasing fee could be really important, right? It could impact you in a very large way. Do you want to pay a full month of rent, or do you want to pay 25% of 1 month's rent? Or do you want to pay $200 for them to do this? Make sense? Tammy, did you have a question? No. Okay. Minimum account balance. Some property managers want you to keep $100, some want $500, some want 1 month's rent. So what is the account balance that they're going to want you to keep in their account? Termination criteria. If you decide, yeah, you and I, we just don't work, so I'm firing you, property manager, what is the termination clause? Like, do I have to give you 30 days notice? Do I have to give you 30 days notice, but my contract, I still have to pay the management fees through the end of the contract? Right? And I know someone who's not here tonight, and they could talk to this, but essentially they terminated a property manager, and the property manager held essentially a lot of money to pay for those management fees because they terminated early, which in my opinion was not the correct or legal thing to do. But and then what's included? So I'm paying your management fee of 10% per month. What do you include in this? Right? So let me flip over. So here's an example of the property manager that I use and what they include at no additional charge. I'm going to give you, this is somewhat of a marketing document, but it's important to know. If your property manager goes out and does a tri-annual or biannual inspection, are you paying for them to do that extra above the management fee? In my opinion, you shouldn't be. That's why I hired you as a property manager. That's what a property manager should do inside the management fee. So, routine maintenance inspections, right? Issue work orders, prepare monthly statements. That one, like, yes, of course, we're expanding our list here. We're, of course, going to prepare monthly statements without charging you extra. Tammy.
Does your property manager send you copies of those routine maintenance inspections?
We're going to talk about that later.
Okay.
So if I don't hit that, let me know. Security deposit settlements. We'll talk about that later as well. Service of 3-day demands for compliance, mileage, application processing, market rent surveys, right? All of this stuff is stuff that this property manager does as a part of their management fee. And I'll scroll down for you guys. Right? One of the important ones, right? Obtaining written proof of workman's comp insurance from every vendor. So if you had a vendor go out and they were working on a property and they didn't have this and your property manager didn't verify this and they got injured or they injured the tenant or they damaged the tenant's property, right? This is a huge issue. So that's super important to me. Having the smoke and CO detectors checked, right? They also now check, as a part of that regular check, they check the toilets, right, to make sure that the bolts are secure, because this is one of the most frequent things. The bolts on the toilet come a little loose, there's a small leak, and no one notices. And then 4 months from now, your subfloor is bouncy, and then 4 months from then, somebody falls through. Maybe not. Just depends on how much they're bouncing, right? So all of these things are essentially what, and this happens to be my property manager, what they are doing. So I didn't even need to come back here. So I'm going to show you 2 different agreements of property management agreements. So this one is a 6-page agreement, right? Basically, hey, we're going to insert your name, and then we've got some exhibits, right? Appointment of agent is Exhibit A. Management duties of the agent is Exhibit B. I'm going to skip some of the stuff in the middle because compensation of agent, right? 9% of the gross revenue actually received. So they're taking 9% of gross rents plus pet fees plus utilities, 9% of everything. Yep, they're collecting it. So, exhibit. Here are the duties to be performed, right? Leasing, right? We're going to attract, we're going to retain tenants. We shall strive to lease a minimum of 1-year lease term, which is something you would want. We're going to collect rents. We're going to take care of the property. And I'm just going to describe how are they going to take care of the property. Expenses. Hey, agent shall pay these things. Whoa. And apparently this is page 4 of 3. Not sure what's going on there. I was like, right? So this is you telling them, I want you to pay these bills on my behalf. And you can have your property manager pay your loan if you want. I do not do that. I would much rather know that my mortgage got paid, because if my mortgage doesn't get paid, somehow I don't get notified, that impacts my credit. My credit is super important for being in the real estate business. Enforcement of warranties, yard care service, furnace filter. Here you go. Things that are not included. For an additional $75 per service, we will replace the furnace filters in the property every 6 or 12 months. How often do you replace your furnace filter at home? Anyone? This is not a rhetorical question. Monthly? Monthly to 3 months, right? So 6 months to 12 months, like, and I have to pay for it, like I'm already unhappy, right? So, let's go to page 5 of 3. I don't know what that's even about. Property report, right? Hey, we're going to give you a property report. The fee for this service is something. So you know you're going to be paying extra for this. Addendum, right? Hey, occasionally we're going to bill out tasks by agent employees. It's $40 per hour. And this is an old agreement, so I'm sure this price has gone up. And this is not my property manager now, right? Property management company undertakes the coordination and direction of hiring someone else out. We're going to add a surcharge of $15 an hour. So I call up James and I say, hey, I'm the property manager. I need you to go fix a property for Denise. And he's going to bill me $75 an hour. I'm billing Denise $90 per hour just for organizing that as the property manager. It's nice if you're the property manager. It's not so nice if you're the owner. So that's the first one. This is the second one, and this is a much longer agreement, so I'm not going to go through it. I'm going to scroll down. Basically, something that you want to look for, bank accounts. Are they holding security deposits in a separate bank account? This is regulated that if you are a property manager not managing your own properties, you have to have a separate trust account to hold the security deposits in. You cannot use the security deposits as part of your normal cash flow and operating your business, because that's dangerous for the owners. Then it talks about what the broker is going to do, right? They're going to rent it, they're going to repair, they're going to do maintenance, they're going to do other services. They're authorized to collect security deposits. They're authorized to basically pay for things. They're going to provide financial reports. They're going to communicate landlord to tenant. Then there's a bunch of stuff where they're not going to get sued. They're going to have insurance, right? So you can see the difference in the two agreements. In the previous agreement, nothing really about, are you going to hold insurance? Are you going to have a separate bank account? Stuff like that. Broker assumes no liability. I'm going to skip that. You can call your attorney and discuss that one. Owner is responsible for all expenses of litigation. One of the jobs of your property manager is for you and them not to get sued. If you get sued, it's expensive. But if you do get sued, guess who's footing the bill? It's you. Or Royce. Royce just volunteered. Perfect. Fees for legal advice, right? If you're asking the property manager for legal advice, they're not an attorney. They're going to go and they're going to contact their attorney, and you're going to pay for that legal advice just as if you had called an attorney, right? All right, broker's compensation expenses for management services, 10%. Or $75 per month. So if you're renting for $750, you're good. But if you're renting your properties for $600, this doesn't look so good to you, because if it's vacant, $75 a month. They're going to lease it. If you decide to sell it, anything that you ask them to do in order to help you get it rent or sale ready, you're going to get charged for, which makes sense. However, they're not saying that they have to actually list your property, which some property management agreements actually say. They'll do restoration, renovation, and substantial repair work. They're going to go get bids from other people. And there's the initial setup section. I just skipped by it, right? An initial setup fee of $200 and $250 per rental property. So you should buy a 100-unit property, right? Cost average that to $2.50 a unit. Makes it easy. Building compliance, right? Termination. So termination clauses, right? Termination by either party. This is how you terminate. This is for a cause. If there's breach of agreement, they cover it. If there's failure to act, if there's excessive damage, if there's inadequate insurance, if you're listing the property for sale, compensation based on termination. So it's basically everything is listed here in the entire agreement. So if your agreement doesn't tell you how you can terminate, that's probably an issue. You want to know, how can I get rid of this property manager if I'm no longer getting along with them or they're not doing what I want? This is the complete agreement. The rest of this stuff is just some typical legal stuff. Notices should be sent there. Mediation. I don't think there's anything else in here. And then they ask you for some information. Property address, legal title holder, and insurance agency. And that's essentially the agreement. Any questions on the difference in the two agreements? It's more just to kind of give you a sample if you've not seen any agreements. No questions? All right, typical costs. What are typical costs of a property management company? After that, you should have two great examples.
Monthly maintenance.
Monthly maintenance, what'd you say? 10%. Anyone else? Leasing fee. A whole lot of printing stuff. Right, so normally the property management fee ranges from what to what? Royce said 10%. What are some other numbers that a property management fee would be? 8 to 12, Royce says. Anyone outside of that? No? No one?
I think, didn't Emily and Mike say that they were looking at one company that was 7%, but it had exorbitant fees for everything?
Yeah, so, I mean, 8 to 10, 8 to 12, somewhere in that range is typical. However, some property managers are 3 to 5%. How on earth could a property manager charge 3 to 5% of gross rents and get away with that? Poor service. That is definitely one answer. How else could they do it? Because you will see these ads. When you own properties, you will get postcards that are like, hey, come to us, we charge 5%. And you're like, wow, I'm paying 10, that's half. That sounds like a great deal. Why is that? How is that possible?
They bill you
for the first month. Because they what?
They bill you for everything.
Because they bill you for everything. You want them to go out and do an inspection? Great. There's $200. Right? It very quickly adds back up to be about 10%. So if you're getting lower than 10%, chances, in my opinion, are high that either your properties are not being well taken care of, which is bad for you as an owner, or something else crazy is going on, right? So this fee is an expense. You get to deduct this on your taxes, so that's good. Most property managers keep late fees. They keep sublease fees. They keep the rest of those fees, right? So if your tenant doesn't pay rent on the first and they have to go chase them down and get the money and they get an extra $50 for doing that, that $50 goes directly to them. It is what they're doing. They're getting compensated for that work, some would say. Some would argue, no, that's part of your 8 to 10%. Tough, tough. You should give that to me. Have that discussion with your property manager. See how it goes. Yeah, you should put tenants in that pay rent on time. There's likely a monthly minimum. We talked about this, somewhere between $50 and $100 if your unit's vacant. So you're never just going to be like, hey, my unit's vacant, I'm not paying you, go find a tenant, right? That's obviously not going to happen. So we talked about this already, but it's in yellow. Negotiate that if it's higher than what you would pay if it was rented. Don't ignore that. Leasing fees. This is very, very wide ranging. 0 to 100% of 1 month's rent. So what do you want to pay? I don't want to pay 1 full month of rent just for somebody to lease it once a year. Now my max rent is 11 months out of 12 months. That sucks. So maintenance, how much does maintenance cost? A lot. So a lot. 25 bucks. If you're finding a property manager that's charging $25, I don't know what kind of maintenance they're doing. It's probably not great. But like going rates for maintenance are $60, $65, $75 an hour. If you call a handyman that is licensed and insured, you're probably paying about $75 an hour for a handyman to come to your house. So it's not cheap. Third-party work, are they billing it just as it's billed to them? Hey, it's $300 from a plumber and you're getting billed $300? Or are they upcharging that? It took them 6 hours, so we're billing you $15 an hour times 6 more. Man, that sucks. Instead of paying $300, you're paying $390. Right? Hopefully they're not upcharging. Pass-through charges, this is what Royce just mentioned, right? All the stuff they print, all the locks they change, or all the duplicate keys they make, right? That's a part of their business expense. Chances are high they're going to pass that through to you. So ask, hey, how much are you actually going to charge me per month for your black and white and color printing and telephone lines so that you can take the calls from the tenants, and why isn't that included in your management fee? That seems like that's a part of your business. Shouldn't that be included in your 8 to 10%? Ask about those before you sign up. There's another yellow tip for you. So let's assume rent's $1,800 a month for a 3-bed, 2-bath house in Fort Collins. What are the total costs? Monthly management fee is $180 at 10%. That's $2,160 a year. How many of you want to pay $2,160 a year for a property manager to manage your house? Does that seem reasonable? Denise is like, I'm leaving. I'm never hiring a property manager. Yeah, all right. So leasing fee at a quarter month rent is $450. So $2,610 for the year. Does that seem reasonable? For somebody to take care of your house, make sure the tenant's paying rent, handle all tenant communications, do triennial inspections, do any maintenance work. Obviously, you're getting billed for the maintenance on top of that. Does that seem reasonable? What's that? Well, if you get sued, it's still on you anyway, right? I mean, you're still footing that bill. But is this just reasonable outside of being sued? Is $2,600 reasonable to pay someone else to manage a single-family home for you? Yeah, I think so. So if you wanted to do this yourself, you could spend 100 hours a year, right, at probably really inconvenient times, because the tenant's not going to call you at 1 p.m. on a day when you're not doing anything and you can go fix whatever it is they need. They're going to call you at 2 in the morning and you're going to have to call a plumber, and then you're going to have to go over there and you're going to have to handle the situation because it's a leak, right? So $2,610 an hour. This obviously would scale to some degree if you had more properties, right? You could be more efficient and make more per hour than that. However, at some point, you're going to run out of time, or you're just going to be like, I'm out of patience, right? I don't want to deal with this anymore. I would like someone else to deal with this for me that is trained, has multiple people, and I don't have to think about it. Or the alternative is you hire Royce, who I think wants to do this as his full-time job. Or maybe James does. Call James. But you could hire someone Yeah, I don't know. It's the patience thing, right? It's like, do you really want to deal with this stuff, right? Yeah, I mean, but he already works in a business where when someone calls, he has to go. Does he really want 2 businesses like that? That's really difficult. What's a priority? You could hire somebody, you could train them to do it just like you want it done, and then they could do it, and you could pay them less than what you'd pay your property manager, and you could make a profit, right? This is definitely one way to do it. However, you got to hire, you got to manage, you got to train, you got to fire, right? And what happens when you're in the middle of turnover season and this person decides, I quit? Now it's you. It's back to you again. Whereas a property manager that's not a mom and pop shop with 1 employee, they don't quit. Someone in the company might quit, but they don't quit, and you still have a property manager. Royce, do you have a question? Okay.
More of a statement, because that's what I do. Now that one more class I have to teach. A lot of people think property managers are really expensive, and so for myself, one of the things I discovered about myself is that I actually struggle being hard on tenants, right? When I have to deal with a difficult tenant, or maybe it's a tenant that I really like, they're really nice people, but you have to come down and you have to be really tough on them because ultimately you're running this as a business. I tend to face-to-face be more lenient than I would expect myself to be when I actually step back and look at myself at the way I run a business. I am far better at, when you put a property manager in place, it's so easy to just say, this is how it is done, because you abstract yourself away from some of that emotional decision-making that is, part of providing housing for people. And so for me, I think I end up in the long run saving money by using a property manager because I won't make these compromises that should not be taken anyways. And then I think that, Brian talks about, yeah, I can do all these normal maintenance things, but when you get a really pain in the butt tenant that you have to go out there a lot and you have to deal with, that time becomes really, really expensive. When everything's going fine and it's easy, everyone thinks that they can be a property manager, and what you're really paying for is for those really crappy times that you don't want to have to deal with.
Yep. So what Roy said was he would rather yell at his property manager than his tenants, in case you didn't catch that. So before you sign the contract, negotiate before you commit. If you walk in and you're like, yeah, I want to hire you as my property manager, and then they're like, great, we charge 12% and a 1-month leasing fee, and you're like, I don't want to pay that, right? It's too late. So don't go in and commit. Negotiate. What are you going to negotiate? Anything you want, right? Everything is on the table. Everything is a negotiation. So management fee. Hey, yours is 10%. I only want to pay 8. I want to pay 5, right? And they may just tell you, no, that's not going to happen, right? Are you marking up your vendors? What's your maintenance rate? How much are you billing your own people out for maintenance? I want to have a lower rate, right? A lot of people wouldn't think about this. You'd think about, oh, you charge 10%, I want to get 8. And they're like, well, we can do 9. And you're like, okay, that's great. And leasing fee, I want a quarter month instead of a half a month. And they're like, great. And you're like, excellent, sign me up. And then you find out their maintenance rate's $80 an hour, and you're like, oh, I wish I would have asked for 65, right? So think about, where are you getting billed? Where are you going to spend the most money? Maintenance plays a huge role in this. Leasing fee, we already talked about. And if you don't ask, you're not going to get it. If you do ask, what's the worst that can happen? They can tell you no. I mean, the worst would be like, yeah, we don't want you as a client. Okay, great. It's good to know that now, right? The goal is not to nickel and dime your property manager. I'm going to just state this, and it's in yellow because it's an insider tip. If you go and you just like, hey, your maintenance rate's 68, I need 67.50, and they're like, because they won't go to 65, and you're just like constantly pressing, would you want a client like that? Probably not. So if you're that client, don't be surprised if you get fired, right? Be reasonable. The goal isn't to like make their life impossible for them to manage your properties. That doesn't make sense and doesn't lead to your end goals. That just leads to your properties not getting taken care of. So you want to have a good relationship. And like I said, you want them to run a good business that's profitable for them so they stay in business, but that's not too profitable for them that you don't stay in business, that they take great care of your properties. Obviously, your negotiation power, if you have 1 unit and they're managing 10,000 units, is almost 0, right? You're not going to walk in and be like, hey, I want you to, reduce your management fee from 12% to 8%. I don't want to pay a leasing fee. And they're like, how many units do you have? And you're like, 1. And they're like, what does it rent for? Like $900. They're like, we're going to make $90 a month from you. Like, what do you really want us to do? Like, it's more work for them to manage one property than that $90 a month is probably worth. So, but if you walk in and you're like, hey, I have 100 units, or I have 20 units, or I have 12 units, you have more negotiation power. So keep that in mind. Does anyone have questions? Microphone.
How does that work with setting rent? Do they get to choose that number, or is it like a
Choose which
compromise?
number? The rent number?
Yeah, like how much you're renting.
We're going
the
to talk
property.
about how that actually works in just a minute. So now I've got 2 questions on hold. You need little buttons for like, did you answer my question? And then they pop up and I'm like, excellent. So if you haven't already, go meet the people that you're going to be working with the most. This is in yellow because it's completely really obvious, but no one does it, right? You're like, yeah, I should have gone and met the people that I was going to work with. I just figured they were good. No, go introduce yourself. Go to the office, take a tour, see what processes they have in place. If your property manager can't show you the processes they use when a tenant calls for a showing, that's a problem. See what software they're using. Is it decent? There's like 3 or 4 major ones out there, like AppFolio, Buildium, Propertyware, and there's one other one that I don't remember off the top of my head, but those are like the main 3. If they're not using one of those, what are they using? Is it custom software? I don't know. And then this one, go visit properties that are currently for sale that your property manager is managing. If you want to know how they manage units, this is a property that's for sale. The owner should probably care about how it looks to be for sale, but go take a look. Because I can guarantee there is one property manager in town that I can walk in almost any unit and immediately know who manages it if it's them. Because it's just not very well taken care of. So, and if you showed me just the financials, I can also tell from the financials. Because it's just obvious. It's just not well taken care of. So, then go back and say, hey, I went out to your property and this is what I saw. Is this you or is it the owner? And dig in until you get the answers you want. Because the owner could very well be, hey, we're not spending any money on it, we're selling it, we don't care, done, right? And that's okay. That's not the property manager's fault. Make sure everything you've discussed is actually in writing. Obviously, anything that's verbal is not going to be there. It's helpful to discuss your expectations. I would prefer to do this in writing. For everything, including the leasing season, maintenance requests, how these things are all handled, right? How much involvement you expect to have in their process. Are you going to be totally hands-off and just let them manage and you're never going to talk to them unless there's an emergency? Or are you going to be talking to them on the phone every day, right? Discuss your expectation. How much involvement are you going to have, right? And then try and understand if they're going to meet your expectations based on what you want. And if they're not, you don't have the right property manager for you. Communication is super, super critical, both the frequency and the level of importance. If you're like, oh, I went by and like there's one branch on a small tree that needs to be trimmed and that's what you're sending them every week, you're just pissing them off, right? What do you got for me?
So can you say a little more on that? What is reasonable communication? Twice a month? Once a month?
I think reasonable communication from my perspective as an owner is anytime I have a question or an issue, right? Now, if I have a question and an issue 7 times every day, that's probably not going to be okay. However, in the beginning, I might have a lot more questions, but they should understand, and in this conversation, hey, I'm going to have a lot of questions up front. I've not worked with you. I'm going to ask questions on my statements, and I'm going to get answers, but every time you give me an answer, I'm going to learn. So the number of questions should dramatically drop in a few months. If they don't, you're probably not going to like me very much because I'm going to be annoying the crap out of you asking 7 questions 7 times a day, right?
Yeah, so that's the nature of the question is, once things are going smoothly, what type of frequency would be reasonable?
Yeah, so I mean, the twist on that is when are things ever going perfectly smoothly? Like if you have 1 unit, I can totally see that. If you have 10 units, Is there something going on with one of them at any given moment? Probably, right? Somebody's breaking a lease, somebody wants to sublease, somebody has a pet they're not supposed to have, somebody has a tenant they're not supposed to have. And there's shit that goes on all the time, right? That you just have to deal with. And so, you know, my contact with my property manager is down to, you know, once a month for property management statement stuff. And then anytime they ask me stuff, because they'll send me, hey, you know, this dishwasher is, you know, broken. Do you want to replace it or repair it? And so I'll answer that. And then I'll have questions about, well, how old is it, right? So I think, you know, your communication to them, like if you're driving by your units and you're walking them, you know, 3 times a week, you're probably way overboard. But if you're driving by your units once a month, walking around them and taking pictures because there's cigarette butts littering in the front yard and sending them a picture, like what's going on, I think that's totally legit. You want to take care of your properties, right? You want to manage your property manager. Does that answer it? Yeah, I mean, it's a sliding scale. There's no like once a week is great, twice a week is bad. It just depends. Summer turnover season, like it might be every day for June 30th to July 30th, depending on how many units are turning, right? Ultimately, you got to recognize that hiring a property manager is not an easy button. You cannot just say, I hired a property manager, I'm done, yay. You can do that, but I don't think you'll like it. You got to know you are always, hopefully, going to care more about your business than anyone else in the entire world. So you have to manage your property manager, which is why we teach this class. All right. When should you turn over your properties to property management? Turnover season? Now. Anyone want to venture a different guess? There's no right answer.
Never. Your tenants are being a pain in the butt.
When your tenants are being a pain in the butt, never. So we have never to now. That's pretty good.
3 months before it's going to be vacant.
3 months before it's going to be vacant. Let them do the work. Yes, as soon as possible. All right, we're done with that slide. Just kidding. So discuss the following situations, right? When it's already vacant, how does this impact you? It's too late, right? You've waited too long. You're turning it over. Your property's vacant. You probably should have done it earlier. At the end of the current lease, because this is what a lot of people think. Hey, I put somebody in there. They're paying their rent on time. They told me they're going to move out. I'm going to turn it over on June 30th, and I'll call the property manager in June and let them know. Does this help the property manager do a good job for you? No, not at all. In the middle of the current lease, in my opinion, this is better, right? Now it's, hey, we've got a solid tenant. They're paying rent. Here's the lease. We're going to transition while the tenant's in there. You're going to now be responsible for finding out if they're moving out, doing the lease extension. That's not so bad, right? But a lot of people go, there's nothing happening during the year. Why do I want to give up this $180 a month on this single family home? I don't. But at some point, you pull the trigger. How about during the summer turnover cycle? This is when Royce likes to turn them over, I think. Why should you not turn them over then? Yeah, you have the mic. That's what I'm asking you, because you're teaching this class.
I think what you're getting at is you should do that sooner, when you have like 3 months ahead of time, so that they actually have time to do the work and that you don't have vacancy.
Yeah, the property manager starts preparing for summer turnover in like February, right? If you, hey, I got 7 properties, they're all going vacant on July 1st, and it's June 1st, they're scrambling, and you're not their priority, right? All their like good paying clients that have already like done all the right things, that's going to be their priority. Emergency turnover. So somebody calls and says, hey, I'm going to break my lease. Guess what? Have my stuff out by the end of the day. I've gotten this phone call more than one time from good tenants. And I'm like, well, why didn't you call me sooner? Well, excuse. Okay. I'm like, great. I'm turning it over like right now. And I'll pick up the, please hold, hang up, dial the property manager. You now have one more property to manage. Here's the address. Please get it rented. I'll send you pictures when I get home, right? Immediately. Or, hey, something happens to you where you can no longer manage your properties, right? This is another great reason to have a property manager. You're managing, hey, oh yeah, it's easy for me to manage 15 of my own single family home rentals. Sure it is, until you have a heart attack or you have to go to the hospital for 2 weeks, right? Then what? Then who's doing that job? And then how smooth is the turnover going to go? So giving property manager properties, right? Make the properties manager life as easy as you can. This is your first interaction with you saying, hey, I'd like you to manage this property. Don't make it difficult. Be organized, right? Have all of the information. Send them the information in one email about the property. Here's the current lease, here's the current tenant application, here's the walkthrough, here are pictures of the property, or the link to pictures, or here's a link to all the documents I have on Dropbox, whatever it is. But be organized, right? Start your relationship on the right foot. Relationships in this business matter a lot. So, what utilities do you want them to pay? Turn off any auto pay you have. Otherwise, they just pay it twice, right? You pay it once and then they pay it and you're like, this sucks, right? Make sure owner turn on is on with the utility companies. And what this is basically if your tenant stops paying their bill, they will not shut off the utilities. If your tenant randomly vacates the property in the middle of winter and they stop paying their electric and it was an electric heated building and the pipes freeze, that sucks. You want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So make sure you have that turned on and make sure you have the notices that if they're delinquent, they get sent to the property manager so the property manager can follow up, which is what that says. Got ahead of myself. We already talked about paying the mortgage. I pay my mortgages all on auto pay directly from the bank accounts. I don't have the property manager, but the property manager, some of them are willing to pay your mortgage. So if you want to do that, go for it. I also still pay the HOA fees. However, I write one lump sum check for every HOA that I have on a property. I don't pay it by the month. I think that's just super annoying. So, property information questions they're likely to ask. There's a lot of them. Depends on your property manager, right? But they're going to send you an email. It's going to have a W-9 you're going to have to fill out for tax purposes. And then they're going to ask you, what are the utility companies? What gas service? Where's the water shut off? Typically we send out owner disbursements on this date. Does that work for you? Would you like it mailed to you or done via direct deposit? If you want direct deposit, what's your checking account number? Like all the basics of your property. Is there an HOA? What do you suggest for a pet policy? That's a good question. If they don't ask, what are they using? Not what you wanted. They're using what their default is, right? Are there any improvements that you know that need to be addressed, right? Any other special stipulations you want in the lease agreement? That's a good question. If my property manager is asking me this, I feel pretty good about that. They're asking me what I want. I like that. Would you like to be notified for maintenance repairs? If so, what dollar amount? And then, I don't even know if I brought the other example. Oh, I did. So another example is, hey, fill out this form. Here's who owns it. Here's the property profile. What are the features of the property? Right? Carport, sprinklers, garage, where's the mailbox? Is there an HOA? What are the schools? Hey, what's your stove, microwave? What are your all appliances? What are the color? What are the serial numbers? Right? Where are things located? Who's your insurance company? What's the policy number? Who built the home? Who's your realtor? Utilities to be paid. Will you allow pets? Lead paint disclosure, there it is, so you're signing it right there. But you can see the variance, right? Your property manager should have some form of intake form. Any questions on those? Perfect. Royce, did you have a question? Just a comment.
I just wanted to...
Teaching a third class, Tammy. Note it.
The comment about building a relationship, I think that really should be stressed, though, because we talked about a lot of us complained about communication being the hardest thing. And so I think there's a couple things. Start off on a good foot. Brian mentioned being organized. I think you should definitely understand what type of landlord and the type of decisions that you're going to make and be consistent with the type of decisions you're going to make, because it's going to help your property manager be more consistent across all of your properties. And when you're not available, they will be able to make a decision that most likely aligns with what you would normally do. And so that consistency gives them much more confidence to call and talk to you, because they don't feel like they're going to be surprised with this random different person they get on the phone each time.
Yep. So lease differences. Your lease, if you're using one before you turn it over, is going to have some differences, right? A great property manager is going to sit down and read your lease, because they have to now enforce your lease for the remainder of the leasing period, right? They're not going to switch to their lease in the middle of the lease. So you can also request that they just use yours. This is unlikely to happen with larger property managers. They have one lease that they all know, and they're going to use that, and their attorney did it, and their attorney's familiar with it. so they're probably going to use it. I recommend that you communicate at least the following about your lease, because this stuff is confusing. It's confusing because these employees have A, never seen your lease, the management has never reviewed it with an attorney, and it could be crap or it could be amazing, right? And I think the lease I used was amazing, but it still confused my property manager multiple times. So, right, break your rent down into rent, utilities, pet rent, HOA, cleaning, or any other fees you have. Literally a spreadsheet with this is actual rent, this is pet rent, this is utility, and this is how it totals up to be the total in the lease. Right? What's your pet policy? What pets are the tenants allowed to currently have? That's written in my lease, but I'm going to pull it out and make, here's the one pager on this property. Make it really, really easy for them. Amount of damage deposit held and whether any is non-refundable. Right? Because if they're like, hey, they have $2,000 damage deposit, but $500 was non-refundable for pets, and they're like, they gave him $1,800 back, you're out $300. What day is rent due? How long is the grace period? What's the late fee schedule? Any issues with payment history? This is important. If this is the first time they've paid rent late, right, or it's the 10th time, that's something a property manager is going to want to know. How long after the lease end date until the damage deposit refund is due? Typically it's 60 days, but it's, if they don't get this right and yours is 30 days, it's triple damages. So if I don't refund, Denise rented from me and I don't refund her $2,000 in 30 days, and that's what the lease says, I can owe her up to $6,000. It's treble damages. What utilities does the tenant pay directly? Who's responsible for yard care? Especially for duplexes. It's pretty obvious in single-family homes who's responsible, right? It's the tenant. It's like you're living in a house, you should take care of the whole thing. In a fourplex, where there's 2 units up and 2 units down, who really owns the yard? No one. You're taking care of it as a manager. How about a side-by-side duplex where yards are fenced? Who takes care of the yard? A lot of property managers will tell you it's you. And I will tell them it is not me. It is the tenant. I'm not paying you to do that. Discuss any other unique things in your lease. One really unique thing in our lease is that instead of charging a $50 late fee, we allow a $50 discount, and the rent is basically shown as $50 higher. So if you're familiar and you've been to our lease class, if we were going to charge you $2,000 and that was what you were going to pay and that's what we advertise, the lease is actually written such that it says rent is $20.50 and you will get a $50 discount if you pay by the 1st. So rent is still $2,000, but it's an incentive. Hey, if you pay, you get a discount instead of if you don't pay, we charge you a fee. So this one leads to a lot of confusion with property managers. Leasing season. This was the, who had the leasing season question? I'm hopefully going to cover. Yes. So preparations, like I said, start as early as February for leasing season, right? And this seems like, oh my gosh, that was like 6 months ahead of time. Yes, it is like 6 months ahead of time, but there's a lot of work to do. You got to find out what needs to be done to the properties. What are you going to rent properties for? You got to talk to the owner. You got to find out what they're okay with. You got to decide if you're going to renew the current tenants, and you got to issue the renewals. You got to wait for the tenants to actually sign the renewals. You got to badger the tenants to sign the renewals. Then you got to go talk to them again because they still haven't signed it, and then they lost, and you got to resend it to them, right? And this process goes on and on and on and on, right? So if you haven't heard from your property manager by the middle of February, you need to pick up the phone and call them and be like, what's going on? And if they're like, I don't know, you should probably find a new property manager. Meet with your property manager in person. Why? To build rapport, to build your relationship with this person or these people, right? Ask that the leasing manager comes. Ask that the general manager comes, right? You should at least have the leasing manager who's responsible for leasing your properties there. You're going to discuss, hey, what are we going to rent these properties for and why? They should be in on this. When I sit down, it's the general manager and the leasing manager. I have more pull with my property manager than most people. But I would ask, hey, can I get the leasing manager and the general manager, or the leasing manager and the maintenance manager, right? The people that are actively working on my properties. Get to know them. This is not just a meeting where you sit down and you tell them all the shit they did wrong, right? Last year, you messed up my rentals. This property was vacant. You definitely get to do that. So no problem there. But it's not all the meeting is about, right? The meeting is basically, hey, what are we going to renew these properties at? It was renting for $900 last year. The tenant paid on time. They want to renew. Okay, market rent is $9.95 this year. Okay, the tenant renews, $9.50 is their renewal rate. If they don't renew, let's market it at $10.50. Right? Most renewals are slightly less because you don't want the turnover. Right? If they do move out, you're going to try and get market rent or above. So, what is the leasing strategy? What are your concerns? And I'm going to just tell you, do your own research on what rent should be. Show up to this meeting prepared. This is your opportunity for the year to get more rent. If they're like, yeah, last year was $900, this year we're going to push it to $915, I'm like, no. How about $950 and let's take $1,100 for market rent? Because you should be advertising 90 days in advance. If you get no calls at $1,100, let me know. We'll drop it to $1,050. If you get no calls at $1,050, we'll drop it to $1,000. No problem. But push this. I would encourage you to push your rent numbers higher than what your property manager thinks. In a lot of cases, property managers are like, I know I can rent this for $900 a month. Done. Right? Well, you could rent it for $995 too. Just got to ask.
Yeah,
Royce.
their incentive to increase the rent by $50 a month, for example, right? That is like $60 a year difference to them overall, which is nothing, right? They don't. So if they can rent it cheaper, it's cracking me up. So if they have an easier time by keeping it lower, it's really in your best interest to try and push that price higher.
Yes.
And James has some interesting stats on like opportunity cost based on market cycles, but essentially it just shows you should just always be pushing for the highest rent you can get.
Yep. So, don't settle. Don't settle for low rents. And I already talked about this, right? There's plenty of time to lower the rent if you can't get it rented. Discuss where they are advertising. Why do you want to do this? This is an insider tip. Most people aren't going to do this. Hey, where are you advertising my properties? Why do we care? Does it matter? Yeah, we want it rented, but we also want to make sure they're using the like #1 and #2 sites for getting tenants. If they're like, yeah, we're advertising on, I don't know, Thrifty Nickel, right? That's such an awesome example, right? They're only advertising in the newspaper, right? That's not going to help you. You want to make sure they're advertising on Zillow and Craigslist, #1 and #2. If they're not advertising there, force it, right? This is a non-negotiable thing. Get an account on Zillow and post my properties, right? Discuss what went well last time, last leasing season, and where do you think they could have improved? I have this discussion every year, and year over year over year, hopefully you will see improvement. I'm sure there will be years in there where you just like, shit totally hits the fan, and it's like, yep, that year just sucked, but next year you were right back in line with your linear like improvement. But this is important. Discuss utility bill back. How much were utilities last year? How did you calculate how much utilities were last year? Did you count the water for the grass and the sprinklers as a part of the tenant utilities? Or are you counting that as an owner utility? How about the public lighting in the parking lot? Is that tenant paid? Is that owner paid? That's owner paid, for those of you who don't know. Sprinkler water can be tenant paid. Cleaning, right? What are these? How did you calculate them? And then, are they reasonable? If your utilities last year were $80 per unit for a 2-bedroom, but this year prices went up and now it's going to be $140, and you go to the tenant and you're raising rent too, that's a huge increase. So you may not want to push it all the way to the top. Tammy.
I'm just curious, is that like a legal thing, or is that just what your property manager, as far as the lights are owner and the water for the common lawn is?
There's something about the lights and safety that you're responsible for making sure it's a safe building. I don't think you need your grass growing to make it safe.
Okay, so you can charge, can you charge for utilities for common like laundry areas and things like that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases, it'll depend on how your meter is, right? And so like for water, sometimes there's 1 meter to a fourplex and it's the yard and the tenants. And so they basically try to go, okay, if there was a common thing, we're going to pull it out, right? And if there's only one electrical thing, hey, how much was lighting? And they try and estimate that. But the goal is to have a discussion about how is this calculation being done and why, so that you know what's going on. And can you charge the management fee for the utilities back to the tenant? So if you're paying 10% and your tenant pays you $100 for utilities, hopefully you can then take that $100 and give it to the utility company, right? Well, if the management company is taking 10%, you only got $90. So can you actually charge the tenant $111, right, roughly, to get your $100 so that you can go? Interesting question.
We were told no recently about that, by the way.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've been told yes. So, you know, for me, the goal is to have my full utilities paid for by the tenant. But you could expand this to pet rent. Property manager collects pet rent, and they take management fee on the pet rent. Should you get the full pet rent? And then you could be like, well, I should just get full rent too, right? And pretty soon, you've got a tenant who's paying an increased fee so that they can rent the place, and now you're not competitive. So I can see both sides of this coin. An attorney did say that this is legal. I think the property managers will respond with, we don't want to be the people who are known as gouging our tenants. And I'm like, well, the tenants are never going to know. You're not going to tell them we're charging you utilities plus 8% so that you pay the full utilities. Or you could just stop charging 8% on the utilities. Property manager, there's lots of options. And I would have these discussions. Like, I'm joking about it, but this is the shit I talk to my property manager about. And I'm sure they don't enjoy it, right? But that's okay. Like, I pay them to do a job. My goal is to make them do the best job possible. My goal is not to damage my relationship. If they say no and they have a good reason, great. But if they say, I don't know, and they're, I'm going to keep pressing because I want a definitive answer. Go talk to your attorney. Is this legal? Why will you not do it? Right? Does it make sense? And be reasonable. More on leasing season. So communicate your expectations, the theme for tonight, and what's important to you. Do you want less turnover? Do you want more turnover? Do you want higher rents? Do you want more people to renew? Like, what do you want? If you buy a new building and it has 6 units in it, so we bought a building in, I don't know, January or February of this year, and it's got 6 units in it. And the leases turn over 2 months apart all the way through the middle of the year. And the rents are really, really low. So do we want all 6 units to turn over this year? No. Please no, right? Like, that's expensive. We'd much rather have like 2 to 3 units turn over and get better tenants who are paying higher rent, and then try and bring the other ones up to be in line, but maybe you're not perfectly where we want them for rent. And then the following year, repeat. And now it takes us 2 to 3 years to kind of get the building where we want it. So what do you want? Low vacancy, higher rent, less turnover. Discuss this with them. Tell them exactly what you want. And so for us, our criteria was for the 2 people's leases who are coming due in May, we're going to like jack the renewal rate to where it should have been, which is like a $100 to $200 a month increase on a property that's like $700 a month, which is a big percentage. And we're going to see what happens with those 2 people. If they both turn, then we're going to slow down on the later ones. If they both renew, we're going to town on the next 2, right? And if they both turn, then we'll slow down on the last 2. But if everybody renews at the higher renewal rate, what did you lose? Nothing. You have higher rent being paid. The tenants are still qualified. You're doing great. Ask for regular status updates of what's rented, what's not, and any issues. So during the normal year, I get one of these about once a month or whenever anything comes up because not much is going on. During summer turnover season, come about April 1st, I expect one of these a week. And my weekly status updates have already started. And it's like, this unit renewed, this unit is not renewing, this unit is subleasing, you know, and these are on the market. So it's just a constant status of, here's all the stuff we need to get done, and over the summer, that list should go to 0. But you can see, hey, this is what's going on with all my properties. And that's what you want. It also gives you a chance, hey, why is that one not renting? And they should be telling you, hey, we don't have any showings for this again this week. It's the last one. It's getting late in the summer. What do you want to do? I want to drop rent. What do you recommend, right? Hopefully they're just sending you those recommendations. Your property manager on July 1st and August 1st, they are busy. Unless you need to talk to them, leave them alone. Like, they're doing everything possible to turn hundreds of units in the same 3-day window, 2 weekends or 2 3-day periods in the summer. Like, your discussion about what should be in the lease on July 1st is not important. So remember, they're doing their best to get your properties done. Spot check your ads. Are your ads correct? Do they have great pictures? Are they full-size pictures? Do the pictures look good? Were they taken in the dark? Does it have the right location on the map? Are they posted on Zillow and Craigslist and the other sites that you ask them to post them on? Right? Is the wording good? Drive by. Is there a for rent sign in the yard? Check up. Make sure they're doing their job. They're going to do it differently than I would do it, probably differently than you might do it, but their way probably works for them. And if it doesn't, you'll know soon enough and you'll find a different property manager. Remember, it's still not an easy button. It may seem that way, but it is not. Remember to ask if there are things that you could improve on. This is in yellow because no one is going to do this, right? I do this every year. And every year my property manager says, nope, we're all good. And I'm like, all right, cut the shit. What would you like me to do differently or better? Like, who am I annoying in your company with my emails about why is this not getting done, right? And we have those discussions. And it takes the right personality type on both sides of the table to have it in the way that I have it. But have that discussion. Understand, where does your property manager think you suck?
Do they tell you when you press them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously you know who I use, and I'm not going to say it on mic. We can talk about it when we turn the mics off. But like the general manager and I like have a very good relationship where I can just tell that person this is crap, like go fix it. And if I'm right, she'll agree. But if I'm not right, she'll be like, nope, this is why, and suck it, right? It's like, okay, thanks for notifying me that that was my issue. So I think when you get to that point, maybe not with those same words, but I think that's a great relationship that you've built, and you can have, and you build the trust, right? Like, I know that that general manager has my back, and I think she knows the same is true. But listen carefully to what they say, and then consider it. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, maybe you don't care, but at least you know. If you're pushing their hot button all the time, it's not any good for you, right? I mean, strive to push it once a month instead of every week. Something different. Slow it down. Subleases. So just some items to think about. Do you guys all understand what a sublease is? Does anyone not understand what a sublease is? Perfect. Thank you for raising your hand. Royce. James will be like, what? He's going to listen to it. So a sublease is Royce is signed a lease agreement. It goes through the end of June of this year. And then Royce comes and says, yeah, I got to move out. And I'm moving out at the end of March. And I'm like, great. The lease says, blah, blah, blah. This is your penalty. In most cases, he can choose to sublease his apartment. And for some property managers, they'll say, hey, it's a $200 sublease fee. You go find your replacement. We'll still screen them, but you find them, it's $200. Or you can be absolved of all your responsibility of finding a tenant. Pay us $500. We'll go find the tenant for you. So he pays $500. The property manager goes and finds another tenant and basically removes him from the lease and adds the other person. And that's a sublease. Does that make sense? Perfect. So some things to think about, right? And these are some hot points right now for me. So I'm going to bring them up to you so you guys can think about them and do what you want with your property managers. I think that the tenant should be responsible in a sublease situation for returning their unit to rent-ready condition. This is how my lease was written. Most property managers' leases are not written this way, right? That tenant's going to move out, and if it was a sublease of a house and the whole, family or tenant, whoever lived there, moves out and it's a completely new set of people moving in, there's turnover costs associated with this. And that pisses me off because I'm like, you signed a contract, you're breaking a contract, guess what? I'm going to charge you and make you return it to rent ready. That's how my lease was written. So I'm asking for this to be put in the lease. It will be a struggle. But I think, why should I have an extra turnover cycle for somebody who broke a contract? You signed a contract that you were going to lease it through June. You decided to leave. That's not my problem. I need you to return it to rent ready so I can find someone to replace you. This means the property manager will have to charge some things that they might not normally charge, like what you would normally consider wear and tear. Oh, well, there's some holes in the wall. I'm like, yes, but they didn't fulfill their obligation. So they are obligated by my lease to patch those holes and pay for them. So that's hard for a property manager because they will go, well, if it goes to court, it might not be upheld. And I'm like, and that's why you need to add it to your lease. So that it will be upheld, go call an attorney and make sure that's possible. Ask your property manager to have the new tenant sign a sublease, right? Royce is moving out at the end of March. He's got 3 months left on his lease. Denise says, oh, I'll rent it. And I come and I say, great, I'm a property manager, here, sign here. She just signed a 3-month lease. You know how angry that makes me? I'm like, I just paid a leasing fee for her to sign a lease for 3 months. So I just lost a quarter month of rent. And then in 3 months, what's going to happen? Or technically in like 30 to 60 days, hey, do you want to renew? Sign this. She signs it. I just paid another quarter month of rent. No. One time, the only way the sublease gets done is if she agrees to rent for 3 months and the next year. That's my policy. And you will sign them both at the same time, and you will only charge me one leasing fee. Things that drive Brian crazy. And I avoid yet another turnover when Denise could move out in 3 months. Why would I ever put someone in a property for just 3 months? There's a few reasons, but we're not going to cover them tonight. And it's like, you would only do it one time. Avoid a second leasing charge. I covered that. Just a note, this doesn't apply if your tenant is moving out due to military orders. That is protected. There's nothing you can do. Do not like try and nickel and dime and charge the military person who's moving because they got orders and they're getting shipped off to Afghanistan. Oh, you have to pay for the hole in the wall. Nope. It's covered by law. It also doesn't cover domestic violence situations. So if you're not aware, if a tenant goes and files a police report and they have a domestic violence situation and they bring the police report, their lease can be terminated based on that domestic violence report. It's for the protection of the people involved. Because otherwise you'd be like, no, I'm going to force you to live with the person that's abusing you, which obviously is not a good thing. Right? We can all really easily see that. Tammy, you want to pass the mic behind you?
So instead of breaking the lease, can they just remove that one person due to the domestic violence, or do they have to break the lease?
From my understanding, it's most of the time it's the people come and they say, I'm terminating, I'm not living there, and they probably wouldn't have qualified without both of them. But I don't know the technicality. If the other person still qualified and wanted to live with someone else, they could probably do that as a sublease. But it's by law, you have to allow them to terminate the lease. So I've never had it where someone just said, I'm going to stay, you're going to go. It's always been, and it's pretty rare. And there are people that have manipulated that situation to get out of a lease. And there's really, it's like one of those things that's really tough to like prove that isn't true. And it's not something you want to try to prove that it isn't true. Because if you're wrong, man, you're just not a very nice person at that point. So maintenance insider secrets. I think this whole slide might be in yellow. I don't know. Set a dollar limit for repairs that you want to approve. This seems pretty obvious. The question is, what is that dollar limit? How much is it? When do you want the property manager to say, hey, this is a repair. When do you want that phone call or email? What's the dollar amount for you? How much? Give me a number. $0. He wants to approve everything. Okay? Anyone have a higher dollar amount than 0? $250. Royce picks a number close to my heart.
3 hours of maintenance costs.
3 hours of maintenance costs, which maybe is like $225. That's $75 an hour, somewhere in there. So if you're going to spend more than 3 hours or that dollar amount, anybody else? $1,000? $500?
I think it depends. Because if you have like just a couple of properties, then you would want to be called like every single time for everything. But if you had like other properties in another state, and you had like, I don't know, 50 properties, then of course like you would want to up your limit a little bit within reason.
So why would you not just want to have, if you only had a couple, are you just like, you want to approve everything? Is that the reasoning? Like, what's the difference between having 3, 10, and 50?
Like 1 or 2.
Sure, but then you're approving everything because you just want to be in the loop. Is that the goal? I'm just trying to ask and understand.
Yeah, probably.
For me, it's we're developing a relationship.
But you're unhappy. Let's be real.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that they start to understand me a little bit better, kind of like what Royce was talking about, where we start to build that rapport and they understand how I think and what I'm.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So maybe it's a sliding scale. Maybe it's, hey, when I have the first couple of properties or I'm really new, I want everything, right? And I want you to call me and tell me you collected rent when you collect rent, right? I don't know. So my limit's $250. I think the default limit for my property manager was $500. And I was like, I started watching some of it and I was like, nope, $250. Like, I want to know, right? So what happens when the property manager gets a phone call, it's the middle of the night, and the water heater's leaking all over the floor in an apartment, and it's $1,200 to fix, and it's an after-hours call, and they have to go out. Are you getting notified? Probably not, right? You're probably going to hear it in hindsight or retroactively or whatever. Neither of those words applies. Yeah, you can call me. You can all call me at 2 in the morning. My phone's not in the bedroom, and it's not going to ring, so I'm not worried. Wow. And after you knock on my door and I don't answer, walk around the corner to his house and pound on his door. So when you get sent the work orders saying, hey, this is going to be $400, do you approve? Don't sit on that for a week. You should be replying immediately. Because if you don't, your tenants are suffering. Your building might be at risk, right? So, and you might want to tell them, hey, it's $250, but it's safety or life or health, fix it. I don't need to hear about it. Or tell me you're going to go fix it. Tell me what it's about going to cost. But if it has to be fixed, fix it. I don't need you to, hey, we need a new furnace because it's the middle of winter and it's 40 degrees in their house right now. That's some legal liability. You have to fix it. So go fix it. Ask for 2 to 3 estimates for larger work items. You're going to remodel a bathroom? Get some estimates. Don't just be like, yeah, go remodel the bathroom, Mr. Property Manager. It's a bad plan. How much is it going to cost? Compare what the property manager estimate, if they do work themselves, to 2 or 3 other vendors who do this work as well. Are they similar? If not, why? That's what that says for those, if you can't read it. And make sure you understand if your estimate is just an estimate, or if it's like, this is the cost, or if it's this is the most it'll cost, barring unforeseen circumstances. Because a lot of times it's like, hey, our estimate's $400, yet somehow I'm paying $950 for it. And I'm like, I don't estimate like that. Like, that's not okay. And so this has been a recent thing with my property manager, which is when you send me an estimate, right, a tree branch falls and it hits a fence and it breaks some of the fence. And you send me an estimate that says it's going to take, it's $450 to repair it. Great. And then I see the bill and it's really $600. I'm like, that's marginally too much overage for me. And then there's another few hours to go paint the fence and I'm like, oh no. Like, when you sent me the repair estimate, that was to repair it back the way it was. Not like to fix the fence and now there's going to be like, I have to fix the yard and I have to paint it. I'm like, it should have all been one estimate. So explain this. Hey, if you're going to send me an estimate, I'm going to hold you to it, plus or minus 10%. Sometimes I expect you to come under. Sometimes I expect you'll be over. But your estimate should be a true estimate for the entire job. Tenant requests. You'll see some of these later. Tenant requests, Royce will call up. He'll be like, hey, Mrs. Property Manager, I would like a screen door on my sliding glass door. Is there one there now? No. Was there one there when you moved in? No. I just think it would be a nice addition, right? And this happens, right? Some tenant requests are, my air conditioning doesn't work. Great, let's handle that. Some tenant requests are not requests you're going to fulfill. How's your property manager going to handle them? You better talk to them, right? Obviously, again, life, safety, health, you're going to handle those. But other stuff, hey, I would like new flooring. No. Like, let me help you out. No. Like, don't bother, right? Consider asking to approve any tenant requests that are outside of life, safety, and health, at least for the first 6 months. See what kind of crap comes in. You'll be amazed. Like, no, why would we do this? It was this way when you moved in. What makes you think it's going to change? Stop
Brian,
asking for screen doors. Right?
Has it been your experience, though, that absent that instruction, property managers will do silly things for tenants that are purely cosmetic?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Like, my fan wobbles, so they replace the fan. That's horseshit. Like, no. Why would I spend $150 for that? The fan was going to fall out of the ceiling? Okay. I accept, right? I'm happy to replace it. The fan's been wobbling for 10 years. It's going to wobble for 10 more. It doesn't need to be replaced, right? It's stupid. Stupid stuff like that. I had that request. Someone asked me if they could install a garden in like raised flower beds, and then they would take it out when they left the property, and I was like, no. Like,
I had the opposite, where it was they just went on ahead and like tilled up a section of the lawn and put it in, and then they moved out, and I drove by the property and was like, what is this crap? Oh, you guys are putting the sod in.
Yeah.
I didn't.
So sometimes you're going to want to ask for vendors' money back. I had a recent one where an HVAC company, tenant called, said my heat's not working. It's an older building. Heat was working fine. They went out, they put a new furnace in the filter, and they charged $208 to basically put a furnace filter in, and instruct the tenant on how to use the system. And I was like, okay, if it was an after-hours call and there wasn't actually heat, I could maybe understand that. But it wasn't an after-hours call, and so tops, to me, that should be $89.99 for a furnace company to drive out. I'm asking my property manager, you need to call him. A, you shouldn't have paid him. You should have disputed the charge immediately. But you need to call him and ask for some of that money back, right? Another example. This just happened. Faulty water heater was installed. I was replacing 3 water heaters. They installed 2, everything was fine. They installed the 3rd one, they filled it, and it started leaking. Just a bad water heater. They took it back to the store. You can imagine, I'm paying for the hourly rate. So I'm like, well, they just installed it, they just uninstalled it, and they're about to install another one. I'm like, geez, might as well have bought 4 water heaters. And I'm like, hey, you need to ask the store where you bought it to pay for the hourly money that you guys would have charged for the first install and uninstall. And so they went back to the store and they asked, and the store said, yep, no problem. We'll give you $85 off. I'm like, okay, great, that's a start. And then this is where I'm happy. Proactive thinking, critical thinking. They said, hey, we got $85 off. That's all they would do. Would you like us to contact the manufacturer and see if we can get more? And I was like, hell yes. Like, that's amazing. Like, thank you so much. Like, winning from the property manager. So when your property manager asks you questions like that, you're like, hey, the next time that you guys screw something up, I'm probably not going to be as hard on you because you're doing really well, right? You're catching on. Appliance repair insider secrets. I highly recommend you just sell or give away or burn or whatever you want to do with your washers and dryers in your units. Get rid of this crap. These things are just repair magnets, and they are impossible to keep working long term. People run their dryers, they don't clean the filters, they burn out the heating elements. It's like $200 a pop for a heating element. It's dumb. They're not going to take care of it. It's not their appliance, right? So get rid of this crap in almost all cases. You have a really high-end rental and you have a really high-end washer and dryer, fine, right? Keep those. But in all the rest of the units, I'm like, nope. You got first tenant that moves in, these are yours. Congratulations, you've won a washer and dryer. Take them with you when you move out, right? If you do own multifamily, hire a company to place machines in the laundry rooms for you. You're like, why would I do that? They're going to take half my profit. Yes, and you will still make more money long term because they will place the machines, they will take care of all repairs, and they will only take half the money. Easy. This is an easy win. One repair on my washer before I did this in a multifamily unit cost me essentially 6 months of profit. It's just dumb. Yes, microphone, maybe, maybe not. You can go. Tammy's running.
Do you also not recommend renting washers and dryers to tenants?
I do not. My property manager actually will rent washers and dryers to tenants.
But it's their washers.
But it's their, it's not my problem. It's not on my books.
So here's the question. What happens if their washer floods your house?
I don't know. It's the same as what happens if a tenant's washer floods my house, right? It's no different. The tenant should have renter's insurance. That should cover it. And if not, mine will have to cover it. Good question. Appliances are super expensive to repair. You ever trying to repair like a fridge that's 8 years old and it's like To buy a new one, it's $800. To repair it, it's like $500. It's stupid, right? Appliance repairs suck. Many times, it's just better to replace the darn thing. So give your property manager guidance. And I've gone around and around, and this is, again, very recent, because I'm like, why would you have done a $200 repair on a dishwasher? Like, my new dishwasher is $400. You would always replace that for me. Like, I've had this discussion. This is silly. So the property manager sent me some guidance, like, hey, we could do it this way, we could do it this way, and I modified it, and here's what we came up with. And you're welcome to take this and pass it to your property manager. If your property manager happens to be mine, you can just tell them copy Brian's. No cosmetic repairs to any appliances that don't affect function. I don't care if it's scratched. I don't care if you're like missing the door to the butter shelf. Like, it still works as a fridge. Not a big deal. Cosmetic repairs like a shelf or a handle for appliances less than 5 years old, capped at $150. If it's more than that, you got to ask me what I want to do. Right? Pretty easy. This doesn't include things that would be charged back to a resident for damage. Right? They steal the 2 drawers and the 3 shelves from the fridge. They're paying for those. I don't care how much it costs. If the appliance is over 10 years and has a confirmed issue, email me, and it's 99% sure I'm going to replace it. And I'm going to respond quickly when you email me too. Right? Unless my property manager can fix it in 1 hour or less. Right? And if they can, great. As long as it extends the life by several years and not like 30 days. Like, yeah, we can fix this, but it's probably going to break again in a month. I don't want to do it. Replace it. If the appliance is a dishwasher and the repairs are over 200, I don't care how old it is. It's a dishwasher. It's a lot of water coming into it all the time, like daily basis. I just want a new one. I don't want a flood. I don't want a leak. That's silly. If the appliance, not dishwashers, is less than 5 years old and repairs over 40% of replacement cost, I'm likely going to replace it. Email me. If it's 5 to 8 years old and it's over 25% of the replacement cost, I'm probably going to replace it. So these are my guidelines now. So feel free to use those, but that should hopefully result in the property manager knowing I'm not calling the repair guy because Brian's going to be ticked if he pays $400 for a repair on a fridge that's going to, 10 years old. All right, property manager monthly statements. They have lots of reports they can run for you. Pick which ones you like. I'm going to kind of go through this somewhat quickly. Ask for when you want them. Most property managers are going to give them to you at the end of the month. I particularly don't like this. I like to see them on the 15th because I want to know, did everyone pay rent? If you see it on the 30th, you're 30 days late if somebody didn't pay rent. I'm like, if I see it on the 15th and there's a full month unpaid rent, I can call somebody and be upset, right? Like, where's this rent? But if I don't, then it's too late. Reports are typically separated by property and or owning entity. So if you have 10 entities that each own 2 properties, you're going to have 10 property manager reports. Here's the reports I find the most useful. Itemized list of income and expenses, right? This basically contains the unit. You're going to see a copy of this. What the actual work done was, how much it cost, actual invoices. So these are the detailed versions of these small line items, right? The small line item says, rehab bathroom, and the invoice says, here's all the stuff we did and how much each individual thing cost. Cash flow statement shows month-by-month income and expense for all categories for each month year to date. Rent roll, obviously, shows what your rent roll is, who's living there, how much rent is, security deposit, any past due amounts. So let's take a look at a couple of these. Here's a rent roll statement, right? You can have a property name. So this is an 8-plex. Basically shows, hey, here's what the bedrooms are, current square footage, market rent, and then actual rent. So here's the actual rent on the property. Here's the deposits, lease from, lease to, when did they move in, and anyone that's past due. Am I good for past due, or am I in trouble here? Tammy says, I'm in trouble. The negative is prepaid rent. They're actually ahead. Yep. Where you're like, why did they pay rent? And they're like, they're paid a month ahead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're behind.
Nope. Yep. So if there was a past due amount, it wouldn't be negative, right? And past due is a negative, which is a positive. So this is a rent roll, right? Tells you all your totals at the bottom. Fairly straightforward. Any questions on rent roll? Cash flow. So this one's a bit longer. It's multiple slides. So just imagine these columns continue to run down. January 2018 through December 2018. When the year resets, you only have January, then February, then March. But I printed 2018 so that you could actually see a full year of something. Up here, all the income, right? Rent, pet rent, utilities, whatever it is, all up here. And then all the expenses categorized, right? Hey, here's some carpet cleaning, and this unit is, which one did I print? It's multifamily. I believe it's actually the same one as the rent roll. So it's an 8-unit building, right? There's some carpet cleaning. This is clearly I paid for it. The tenant had to pay for it when they moved out. I paid for it. The tenant paid for it the next month when they moved out. Something like that. So I'll just flip down, right? Electrical repairs, flooring repairs, keys and locks, landscape, mowing, snow removal, right? Who's doing snow removal in land care? You are on an 8-plex, right? Interior painting, drywall, HVAC. So you can see this is the total of all the expenses. There's still another page before we get to the bottom. Trash, and then all the little things that some property managers charge, right? Like bank charges or postage or internet advertising, signs and returns, stuff like that. So expenses all totaled. Then you've got your net operating income. Then you've got some more stuff down here, total income and total expense. I think there's one more slide. Other replacement, so this is usually where all of your CapEx stuff shows up. Larger expenses, if you put a new roof on, it's going to show up down here because it's not typically an expense. So carpet replacement, these are new floors. Gives me the option to really easily go, hey, do I want to expense this on a CapEx report on my tax return? Any prepaid rent by tenants, and then owner draws, so this is the money they send out every month. So that's the total, and then basically shows cash flow, beginning cash, and actual ending cash for each month. So you can basically see where all of your money got spent during the year. This is super helpful at tax time. Any questions on that statement? Sweet, you guys are questionless. Somebody's gonna have to find some questions. So, single family home monthly statement. Property management statements can be really long or they can be really easy. You have a single family home, it's not turning over, this is probably what your statement's gonna look like for the month. It's really nice. Hey, beginning balance is $100, they paid rent, they paid pet rent, we took out management fees, and we gave you some money. How long does that take to review? Done. Yes, agreed. Here's a multifamily monthly statement outside of summer turnover season. You're like, oh no. So this is 6 pages long. I just want to walk through because every month when you get your statements, one of the most important things you can do is walk through your statement. So starting cash balance, whatever it was, and then, hey, we paid the water utility bill. Got to do that. Don't have any questions about that. This unit, remove and replace pop-up with new. Okay, there's an invoice that corresponds to this. If I don't understand what that is, it's $58 and apparently it was $15.83 for materials, I can go look at that invoice and probably see a better description of, hey, tenant called, the pop-up in the shower was no longer working, they couldn't take a shower, we went out to fix it. Great, an hour of maintenance and some stuff. Seems reasonable, right? If this was $500, what might I do? Probably email the property manager and be like, what the hell is $500 to replace that? Should take an hour. And sometimes they're going to be like, oh, that's a billing error on our part, and they'll fix it and they'll refund you the money. Other times they're going to be like, well, here's the full disclosure. He went out, this is what happened, they found a leak underneath the tub, blah, 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 blah. It was actually $500. And you're like, okay, great, thanks for letting me know. Electrical repairs, right? And this is unit number. So electrical repairs, not very big. Cleaning, electric utility. This happens to be an electric utility for a unit. I don't pay electric for my units. Tenants should be paying that. So I'm probably sending an email, all in one email. Don't send individual emails. Drive your property manager crazy, right? Hey, 201 needs to actually put it in their own name. Tell them I'm shutting it off from my name in 7 days. They need to convert. So, rent, NSF reversal. Somebody paid rent and they had non-sufficient funds. Okay, I'm probably going to go look and see, are they current? Right? Do I see a rent payment for unit 206 later because they basically paid and all 3 of these things got reversed. So I'm going to make sure they're current still. Other people paying utilities, garage rent. This one's interesting. So Unit 201 moved out. This is what they had as security deposit. $1075 gets put into my account, right? This is the incoming column. This is the expense column. And then, same one, the refund they got was $462.59, which means they paid for carpet cleaning, damages, other stuff was taken out of their damage deposit. Does that make sense? So we'll talk about damage deposits right after this as well. So I like to look through this and just see, hey, what's going on? Common area cleaning, that's something I have done every month, so I know what the charges are. Gutters and downspouts, secure fallen gutter and boiler room. Well, that's weird. Why is there a gutter in the boiler room? I don't know. So that's a question I'd probably ask. Remove waste from storage and disinfect area. Like, I'm looking for big charges, right? And the $50,000 charge in there, you're like, what is that? That's a new roof.
Is inspector request their inspector?
Yep. Where do you see?
It just said that underneath a bunch of those maintenance.
Yes. I'll find another one. So snow removal, carpet cleaning. So this is a quarterly carpet cleaning that I do that's mutual area for all the tenants, right? And so in this particular case, this is much higher than it has been in the past by like almost double. So I sent an email and I said, hey, what's going on? It should be like the same amount of hours to clean these carpets every time. If it's not, why not? And so part of that got refunded. So these are resident requests. Keys and lock repairs. Replace the mailbox lock. Resident request. My question is, why are we replacing their lock? Was it that the lock is non-functional, or did they lose their key? Because if they lost their key, they're going to pay for it. I'm not. That's their responsibility. And so you can go down and look at the invoice and actually determine usually what actually happened in more detail. Now I don't see any inspector requests. So there's a lot of rent on that page coming in, a lot more rent there. Replacing a light bulb, a lot more rent. Management fees, cleaning, some more rent, another NSF. I don't remember what unit it was before, but here's another non-sufficient funds. And then you can see right after that, they paid. So I'm like, oh, fantastic. They got an NSF, they got notified. Maybe it's just an honest mistake. They immediately paid. Fantastic. Snow removal, owner draw, and that's really the end of the statement. But you can see during turnover season, right, this is a 6-page report to review. During turnover, this is like 20 pages long. Because it's like, this unit moved out, and this unit moved out, and this unit moved out, and all the stuff. And it's very hard to keep track of everything that's going on. So you want to review your statements every month.
Do you find that your attention to detail has made your property manager better at their job?
I think they've gotten better. I think they had a desire to get better, though, too, right? So, you know, I think they've learned from me and I've learned from them, and, you know, we try and have a mutual beneficial relationship to improve on stuff. I definitely think attention to detail matters, especially in the beginning, and how well they're communicating, right? If they don't communicate and you don't get your property statement until the 30th, and then you find out, hey, nobody paid rent, what are you doing? Like, that sucks, right? I mean, as, you know, we can attest to. So, there we go. A couple other things. Over time, you'll find items that are charged incorrectly or weren't done as you expected. People make mistakes. It's not the end of the world. How does the property manager handle these situations? To me, this is what's important. People are going to make mistakes. What do they do about the mistake? Are they willing to take accountability? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no, right? But as long as I get a response that's like, yes, we acknowledge that this happened, and we're working to make it right, and this is what we're doing, I'm okay with that. It's the blatant disregard of, I did what I was supposed to do, tough, whatever, right? That's not okay to me. Do they go back and update their processes to actually improve? Are they going to let this happen again and again and again and again? You screen a tenant. I looked at the document. It was very clear they would have been denied if you would have seen this. Have you updated your process? If not, we're probably parting ways, right? Do they make things right? Right is pretty subjective. Like, hey, you spent $500. It should have been $120. What is making things right? Is it refunding $380? Is it refunding half of it? Is it updating their process? Making it right is subjective to you. Doing nothing probably isn't making it right. But doing something is better than nothing. They're going to give you a refund. Are they going to redo the work at no charge? Are they going to not charge you a management fee next month in replacement of that? Right? There's lots of things they could do. So what are they going to do? Over years of working together with your property manager, expect to win some of these and expect to not win some too, right? It's an ebb and flow. You can't win them all. If you try to, it's just not going to be beneficial to either of you, right? Eventually, they're just going to be like, yeah, we're done working with you. So if you need to get it your way every time, you're probably going to lose. Have mutual respect, right? This is critical in having your properties cared for. If you were working for someone and they constantly badgered you and berated you, would you want to take care of whatever it is they were asking you to do? Would you be like, yeah, I'm going to go service their property and I'm going to make it amazing? No, you're going to be like, I did it. It's done. Didn't do it to the best of my ability, but it's done. So you don't want that. You want them to want to take care of your properties. Work order. So here's a move out example. Somebody moves out, you're going to get a work order for all the crap that needs to be done for turnover. This is what that looks like. Hey, we need to replace the bulb in the fridge. RC means resident charge. It means they are actively charging this back against the deposit of the tenant. Fantastic. I don't have to pay for it. Remove ice trays. RC. Disposal not working. Please note if this will be a resident charge. This is, I can guarantee this sentence is from me asking them, what was in the disposal? Did the tenant put it there? If so, charge it to them. If not, I'll pay for it. So replace drip pans. This is probably one of my largest annoyances in property management. Drip pans are a normal wear and tear thing. It is more expensive to clean them than it is to replace them, which to me, I'm like, well, if it should have been clean, the tenant should pay for it because they need to leave the unit clean, but they consider it a normal wear and tear thing. I continue to fight this one. I'm like, this is an RC charge for me every time. Yep, replace bulb, RC, screen door off track, replace missing blinds, right? Hey, the tenant took the blinds down. Guess what? They're paying for them. RC charge, I'm going to find one that's not. Floor bubbling up at entrance. If quick solution, possible repair. If not, estimate out for repairs. Perfect. That's me paying for it. Fill holes and touch up paint. Half an hour, estimate. Who should pay for that? Tenant put the holes in the walls, they hung stuff up. That's normal wear and tear. It's like, I lived in the place, I brushed up against the wall, it got a scuff mark. That's normal wear and tear. Now, there's like crayons and markers on the wall, not normal wear and tear. So this is what it would look like. You'd get a list that long, and then, okay, you'd get a list that long, and then you'd get invoices basically showing what's been done. So here's all the stuff that got done. This is how much each one cost. This is the replace the burnout bulbs. This is all getting charged back to the resident, right? And you can see they have a warning. Hey, we're over the maintenance limit. Hopefully we contacted Brian already. And they did, right? Because they sent me the above work order. So all the stuff that was being done all shows up here. The cost for everything. And you see which ones are resident charges. So you should go through these before you allow, and this is the next slide. Oh, sorry, there's the end of it. Before your damage deposit refunds are sent to your tenants, I review every single one of those. I want to know what was charged to my tenant, and I want to debate with my property manager, this should also be charged before they refund the money. Because once it's refunded, you're not getting it back. So I would highly suggest you say, I would like to see all of these every time. And a lot of times, you'll get it on the like 58th day. You have to turn them around quickly, right? It's just, especially during turnover season, you're not going to get those move-outs until August because they're too busy. So be quick, but ask for things that you think should be resident charged to be resident charged. And if they're like, well, it won't hold up in court, a lot of times my reply is, try it. If they take us to court, we'll take it off. I don't care, but I would charge it if it was me running it and I was doing all the work. A couple more things. Verify that regular inspections and walkthroughs are actually being performed, especially if you're paying for them, right? You want to actually get a report. You want to get the pictures. A lot of time you will get one because they will find stuff that needs to be done. Hey, this isn't working. This is what we think the estimate is. It'll look just like that other work order. But make sure they're being done. Make sure that they are driving by your properties more frequently than triannually, right? How does the property look from the outside? If it looks bad from the outside, you should probably schedule an inspection. Common sense. You should drive by your properties. You should walk around the outside. If there are cigarette butts on the ground, you should take a picture and send it to your property manager and be like, what's going on? Go do an inspection. Go have this cleaned up. Charge it back to the tenant who's smoking. When a tenant leaves damages and unpaid rent or late fees, this is a really, really difficult one, right? Tenant does some damage, they've got a $1,000 damage deposit, and they leave $5,000 in damages. You're left with $4,000 unpaid. The tenant is broke. They're not paying it. Maybe you get $1,000 out of them over time. How does that $1,000 get applied to the $4,000 that is owed? This is critical to me because in my mind, what it covers first should matter, right? To me, the default order will be the order of the charges as they were accumulated. So they didn't pay rent, then there was a late fee, then there was a service of notice, and then there was, another service, and then there was an eviction charge, and it's going to be that order. I don't like that order. I hired a property manager to place a tenant that would pay rent in my property. I expect them to collect rent. So I would much rather see unpaid rent and damages to the property before any of that money goes to the property manager. This is going to be a tough one to win with the property manager, but I'm pushing. This to me is how it should happen. They place a tenant who did damages, who didn't pay rent. They should not get paid their management fee until the property is corrected. That's my opinion. The tenant doesn't pay their bills, the rent, and then the management fee. If you get paid rent, I do believe they should get their management fee. I think that's fair. But then damages should get paid. Or maybe you see it as, I think damages should be paid for first. Have this discussion with your property manager before you sign their contract. How do they do it? A lot of times, the software they're using does it for them. So they're not even proactively doing it. It's just, that's how it gets done when they click the button. $1,000 came in, pay, 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 pay. It's in that order. So they might have to do something special to change it. In any case, in my mind, these should get paid prior to any late fees, NSF fees, service of demand notice fees, because those are just fees the property manager is charging in order to collect rent. And if they haven't done that and there's damages, in my mind, there's no way they should get paid. You're still going to have to pay other vendors regardless of whether you get money. You pay an eviction attorney to evict, you are still paying that attorney regardless of anything else. Terminating a property manager. I got a couple slides left. If things aren't working well, what's the first thing you should do? Royce.
Try and fix that.
Try and fix that. I like it. Yes. Communicate what your issues are. Give them a chance to resolve them. Royce says no. That's what I thought you'd say. That's why I called on you. Right? And then decide, hey, did they resolve them in a way that's satisfactory to me? If not, great. Go find a new property manager. Check your contract for termination clauses like we discussed. Communicate the termination per the contract and give them notice. So if you're giving your property manager notice, I'd highly recommend email it to them, because calling them, it's just vocal. Email it to them so you have it, but then physically mail a copy, certified mail, that you get a signed receipt for. That way you can prove you sent it. Because otherwise they'd be like, oh, we didn't get it. You're on the books to pay us management fees for another 60 days. Nope. You signed it. Here's what you signed. You already got it. Some property managers are going to be fine immediately stopping property management services because they know they're not going to get longer term business from you. So they're like, great, you're annoying us, go away. Other ones, not so much. If this happens, great. You've got a new one ready to come on board, which I would highly suggest finding a new one before you terminate your old one so that you can transition appropriately. And you may not want them to continue managing, because if they know they've been terminated, how good of a job are they really going to do for you? Maybe not great. Some property managers require that if a tenant buys the property, or you sell the property, you may owe a commission. Check your agreement. That could be dangerous. And if they don't specialize in selling properties and you're forced to use them, it could really suck for you. You could lose out on a lot of money. If you plan to switch, repeat the interview process, select the next one. Most property managers will be fine just transferring all the information to the new property manager. Occasionally, you will find somebody who wants to be a pain in the butt. There are laws to help prevent this, and your new property manager should be able to apply pressure and make this happen fairly smoothly. Strongly consider rekeying all doors. Your property manager that was old had keys to your units. Do they still have keys to your units? The only way to know is to rekey the locks. Get security deposits back or have them forwarded to the new property manager, and get all of the items on this next slide transferred to you. Ready? Here we go. Copies of leases, obviously lease renewals, any extensions, any concession agreements, keys to all locks, deadbolt, handset, garage, mailbox, copy of any tenant check-in sheets, obviously, or management notes, copy of the tenant ledger, noting any current delinquencies. Hey, did you miss $100 of last month's rent? I still want to collect it. I want my new property manager to go and collect that. Copies of any correspondence with tenants regarding any matters that are not resolved. Recent invoices from any work that has a warranty or for more than $1,000 that's completed within the last 6 months. List of vendors that have performed work on the property during the last 6 months in case an issue comes up. Hey, we had this vendor go out and it turns out the tenant says he assaulted him. Going to want to know who that is. Copies of any bids for any work you were considering, vendor information for utility and trash, copies of any pending legal action, any warranty or service manuals, and information on any matters which you have actual knowledge that may affect the potential to materially affect the property or property owner's business. So basically get everything you can from your old property manager, transfer it to your new property manager, or yourself if you're going to self-manage. Any questions on terminating? Boom. Summary. Do your due diligence before selecting your property manager. James taught an entire class on this. Then examine the cost of doing it yourself versus hiring someone. If you have 1 or 2 properties and you're like, yeah, I like doing this, I think it's an amazing thing if you manage your own properties for a few years before you turn them over. This class will help you manage your property manager, but if you've done it, you know how you want it done. So it's much easier to communicate that to a property manager than never having been through what they're going through. If you don't understand their position, it's hard to see their side. Carefully review the property management agreement like we talked about. Turn over your properties at the right time for you, which is today. Just call tonight, turn them over. Meet with your property manager prior to the summer leasing season. Review your monthly statements. Ask questions. Ask hard questions. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. Why did this cost so much? How can this cost $200 to deliver and install a microwave? And the reply you'll get is, go to Home Depot. What do they charge? $199. Okay, well, we're on par with the industry, I guess. Can we do it faster next time? Ask more questions, Keep the lines of communication open. As soon as communication shuts down, your relationship will suffer, as will your business and your properties. Be aware that shit happens. Right? Shit happens. This bullet's for you. It wasn't intended for you, but now it's for you. And sometimes it's the first thing that happens with a property manager. Right? It's literally like I knew you were coming to class. Like a bad tenant who wrecks your only property. Right? This happened to someone I know. Turned the property over. First tenant the property manager placed, trashed the place. Thousands of dollars in damages. That sucks. Whose fault is it? Is it the property manager's? Maybe. It's probably not the owner's if you didn't place the tenant, but he has to suffer, right? It's like the first experience is bad. Remain calm and work through the issue. Discuss what went wrong, find the root cause, and see if it's solvable. And if they're just negligent, if they're actually negligent, take them to court if you really want to, right? Or tell them, hey, you were clearly negligent. What are you going to do to make this right? Try to see both sides of the coin and then try and be fair and reasonable. It's not always going to go your way. It's not always going to go your property manager's way. If it's going one of those ways all the time, you're probably either firing them or they're firing you. So, lastly, use what you learned tonight. Hopefully you learned something to have your property manager work harder for you. There's lots of tidbits in here. Hopefully the recording worked, but use that knowledge to go to your property manager and have some new discussions. Hey, these are things I want to actually change. how can you guys make this better for me? And that is all I have. Any questions? It's so quiet. No one has any questions. Oh, Austin has a question.
This is probably more of a legal question, so.
An illegal question?
Yeah, so I already know the answer if I ask an attorney, but, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was going to be an illegal question. I was like, this is going to be good.
I was going to say, I noticed on both contracts, they mentioned basically pass on any litigation to the owner. With that being said, like you were mentioning, most property managers have their own attorney that they're passing through leases and whatnot. If for any reason that they're doing something that happens to be illegal, I'm assuming that obviously can't be passed on.
It's still going to get passed on to you. They're an agent for you, right? You signed a contract that basically gave them permission to do stuff. So what probably happens in that case is whoever was wrong, the tenant, they're going to sue the property manager, they're going to sue the owner, and it's going to court. And then if they find, hey, yeah, somebody did something wrong, if the property manager is negligent, you're probably going to have to file against the property manager in order to make that correct. It's probably the actual course of action.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So court's no fun. I mean, it's zero fun. So, other questions? Nothing, huh? Awesome. Well, I'm going to shut this down, and then we're going to find out what property managers are awesome.